Hello, hello, hello. What's up, guys? This is David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos, and today we have a very interesting conversation to have. We're going to be diving into the concept of Phallogocentrism. And so we'll be referencing Jacques Derrida, we'll be getting into some philosophy, some linguistic theory, we'll be getting into some theology, and then a lot of sort of cultural conversation in regards to how this stuff provides, in my opinion, a much larger and accurate framework for what's going on in society. And so I wanted to talk about, I don't know if some of you guys may have saw recently Hans Jacobsi. He is Father Hans Jacobsi of the Antiochian Church. He actually just did an interview on why people hate patriarchy. And I wanted to start by referencing that, going through some of the points that I thought were very important that stood out to me in that video. It's a very short clip. It's only like 6 minutes long. In fact, here I have the link I will share with you guys right now in the chat. So I just shared the link to Father Hans Jacobsi's video on why people hate patriarchy. And I wanted to go through, like I said, some of the points that I thought were worth highlighting from my perspective, and then we're going to go into the concept of Phallogocentrism. We'll be getting into the Deconstruction school, Jacques Derrida, the French intellectual. What is logocentrism? I have some excerpts from his book Grammatology that I want to read. So we'll be diving into the text today in regards to how he understands the signified and the signifier, because this is where this conversation is really, the whole conversation today is going to revolve around the implications of the logos, or God speaking the world into existence, and therefore what that has to do with larger understandings of objective truth. Therefore, epistemology, morality, all these different things are going to be tied to this concept of language. Again, God speaking the world into existence. So we're going to be getting into that. And then, as I said, I have a whole series of things that I wanted to highlight in regards to, because I think the point of this video is to really highlight and address what is being attacked in the sort of cultural revolution we are encountering right now. And it's way more than just, it's white people, or it's way more than just Christianity. It is that, but it is this deeper metaphysical, theological, philosophical concept of the Phallogo. So the privileging of the masculine, logos theology, what that implicates, and how that then has shaped Christendom. So that's what we're going to be getting into. Before I get into that, though, I do want to highlight, I want to thank everybody. There's been a few new sign-ups at the website in regards to some monthly contributions. And again, if you like what I'm trying to do on this YouTube channel, if you're in a position in which you have that ability to potentially go to my website, davidpatrickcarey.com, churchoftheeternallogos.com, and set up potentially a monthly recurring payment of just $5 a cup of coffee, or $10 if you're feeling generous, or something more if you really want to. But I would greatly appreciate that. And I hate belaboring that point, but it really is beneficial for what I'm trying to do and kind of give me a basis to work from. Again, like I told you guys with one of the ortho bros, shout out to Mr. Hill. He's helping me set up my own server and start to build this whole thing out, in which I can't be deplatformed even if they take down my YouTube channel and stuff like that. So if you're able to, if you're in a position, I would greatly appreciate that. So now, like I said, I just sent out the link in the chat. I will throw that in there one more time. It's the YouTube video to Father Hans Jacobsi talking about why people hate patriarchy. And of course, we hear this all the time. Anybody who's gone to university has heard the sort of criticisms of the patriarchy and all this different stuff, usually in regards to a sort of post-colonial framework that's going to be related to Edward Said. He is the sort of famous Egyptian scholar who really, popularized, I guess, the sort of theoretical framework of post-colonialism. But in Father Hans Jacobs's video, he talks about how God is not a mother. He is a father. And that we should not, in any way, especially as Christians, be apologizing for the patriarchy. And we kind of see this, I say, most of the sort of churchians or the sort of cucked church, the sort of subversive nature of a lot of the American churches, Protestantism. But again, we see this in Catholicism, and I would say with GoArch, with aspects of OCA. We're even seeing it with in Orthodoxy. We have things like Orthodoxy and Dialogue, as you guys know, who are promoting the sort of LGBTQ plus agenda. So nobody is safe from this, and that we need to understand why we have a patriarchy and support that patriarchy. We do not need to be apologizing for that. So today, the point is then to really elaborate and explicate why that is the case and why it is a good thing. So God is a father and not a mother, as Father Hans Jacobsi said, and therefore he created through speaking the world into existence. He did not create it in the same way that female reproduction occurs. So this is really important because this idea of God speaking the world into existence, which is going to be tied to this whole concept of Phallogocentrism that's going to be critiqued, because of the privileging of the spoken word and sound itself. This is going to be tied from our perspective as Christians even to personhood. But, I see somebody mention, I do want to highlight that this icon, the monastery icons, my Bishop Anthony in the Antiochian Church, has told parishioners that anybody who has a monastery icon to burn it. So potentially Thursday evening we will have a live stream on burning the icon. Now I had it up here because it was already blessed by my priest at my parish, and he told me to go ahead and keep it. But the bishop said to burn all the monastery icons. As you know, it's a Hindu company. So I've taken it down. I've ordered a new Christ the High Priest icon from Uncut Mountain, so I'm waiting for that to come in. But potentially Thursday or maybe Saturday or even next week, we may do a live stream where we're outside actually burning the icon and maybe just do a Q&A or something real light of that nature. But yeah, so you'll notice the absence of an icon behind me. Now, regarding to Father Hans Jacobsi's video, he also talked about how, from a Christian perspective, there is no competition between the male and the female. And I think this is something we also need to keep in mind because of this sort of, in previous streams, I even highlighted my sort of conversation with a woman in Berkeley who was upset of the books I was checking out because they were patriarchal, logo-centered in general, and she talked about how God is feminine, God is a female. Now, this is all rooted, I would think, in a larger, deeper mentality of that sort of Luciferian urge to be God, and therefore this idea that there's a competition between the masculine or the way that we understand God as a father, and then the more pagan ideas of God or as a goddess. So just wanted to highlight that Father Hans Jacobsi said there is no competition between male and female, and that the Theotokos, she is the archetypal understanding of what a woman should be. And so it's not like Christianity is just subjugating women, as some of the feminists would like to say. That is certainly not the case. And as he said, we have to not apologize for the patriarchy, but learn and understand why it is the case and how to defend it. And so that's part of today's video of why Phallogocentrism is the central pillar of Christendom and why it is the thing that's being under attack, or it is under attack in regards to the sort of cultural revolution. And he says, ultimately, the hate of patriarchy is rooted in a hatred for God himself. And I agree with that. And I think even today's video, as we progress, is going to re-emphasize and reiterate that same point. So, you've heard me say this word over and over and over, and so finally we're doing a video on it. Phallogocentrism. What is it? Well, phallocentrism is the focusing on the masculine point of view. So even when we look, I'm sure you guys have seen stuff on Latin X, right? This is trying to do away with the gendered language within Spanish. Most languages have some sort of gender dimension to it, but most of them also have to, or in one way or another, sort of privilege the masculine. And so this is called Phallogocentrism. This is obviously related, but Derrida is putting together these two concepts in the 60s of the Phallocentrism and Logocentrism. And these are two different things. The Phallocentrism, as you can expect, has to do with the privileging of the masculine, but the Logocentrism is the focusing on language and how we assign meaning to the world. And so from a logocentric perspective, it is really rooted in spoken language. And this is going to be different than what the sort of postmodernists go with in regards to a privileging of the writing. We'll understand why that is in regards to authority, because they are actually doing away with the author entirely in the sort of postmodern discourse of understandings of truth and so much. So the privileging of the sound or the spoken language, this is called phonocentrism. And these are all tied together. They're prioritizing speech over writing. And this is really rooted in Aristotle, because Aristotle had this idea that writing is a sign of a sign, that writing is not really the source. And so this is where when we get into grammatology here in a few moments, what he's trying to talk about is the sign and the signifier and the signified. For Aristotle, writing is really a sort of second-order phenomena on top of speech. So speech and language is a reflection of sort of mental experience, and writing is then a reflection of speech and meaning. This is what Derrida is actually going to be under. He's going to attack this concept. And so Derrida, as you guys probably know, I've mentioned multiple times, he is the father of the philosophical school of Deconstructionism. And this is arguably if not one of the most central dimensions of the postmodern discourse. So I'm sure you guys have heard postmodernism. Many of you guys probably got caught up in the Jordan Peterson wave of 2018. And so talking about the postmoderns and everything. And by the way, guys, if you haven't, please like this video. It really helps in the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't, but deconstruction is a philosophy of what Derrida calls, again, he's the father of it, indeterminateness. And indeterminateness is really how knowledge is what's called aphoretic, based on contradictory facts or ideas, thereby making it impossible to determine truth, to determine what is to ultimately be true. This is where they get sort of relativistic understandings, which is rampant in the deconstructionist movement, postmodernism itself. And so we need to keep in mind that relativism is one of the ways in which logos is under attack in regards to objective truth. Because God spoke the world into existence, there is a direct correlation in our paradigm between language and reality. This is what they're trying to undercut. And they do that through subjectivism, that we all have a piece of the truth, this or that. So, deconstructionism and indeterminateness is directly in opposition to what Derrida calls determinateness, which is tied to a logocentric worldview, logocentrism. And that determinate knowledge, again, this is going to be part of our worldview, is what's called apodictic. And that means it is based on facts and ideas considered to be true from a multiplicity of perspectives. So unlike the indeterminateness, where you really can't make any truth claim because everything is in contradiction to each other, and therefore that's how it sort of maintains its identity, we believe that knowledge is determinate and that facts and ideas can be considered true from a multiplicity of perspectives. Now, Western culture, the whole deconstructionist, the whole postmodern, the whole attack on phallogocentrism is based on the idea that Western culture, Western civilization has been subjugated, has been held hostage by logocentrism and phallocentrism, meaning the privileging of the masculine and the privileging of the spoken word. And this is, again, that privileging of the spoken words tied to metaphysics, epistemology. We can even go into morality, all these types of things. So Derrida believed logocentrism to have a patriarchal agenda, and therefore the patriarchy must be destroyed. This is, again, in the 1960s, really giving a sort of framework for the counterculture in its opposition to the hegemony of Christianity in America, but really Western world generally speaking. And so these ideas were popularized then after Derrida wrote this stuff out, and this is where his book, this is where it really gets going, his book Grammatology. But some of you may also be very interested. Again, Derrida is very hard to read. It's very verbose, wordy. It seems sort of a word vomit at times. But if you guys want, this is his Plato's Pharmacy article in which he really talks about and gets into this concept of phallogocentrism. Some of you guys may be interested in that, some of you not. It's certainly going to be much, much more academic and a very, again, the language is sometimes difficult and obscure to follow. But this all ties to logocentrism. And let me actually read a few things. Just pulling stuff up on the internet that you guys would also be able to find is the logocentrism. It was a term coined by the German philosopher Ludwig Calligas in the early 1900s. It refers to the tradition of Western science and philosophy that regards words and language as a fundamental expression of an external reality. It holds the logos as epistemologically superior and that there is an original, irreducible object which the logos represents. According to logocentrism, the logos is, and we would definitely take umbrage with this, is the ideal representation of the Platonic ideal. Now, we would say, no, the Logos is who incarnated as Jesus Christ, and so the Platonic ideal, or Plato even getting into the concepts of Logos in the sort of the realm of forms, that is an early sort of rudimentary, maybe moving in the right direction, but false understanding of what the Logos is. So we definitely wouldn't agree there. But in regards to linguistics, how they understand this concept is with the logos as the site of representational unity. And so we would agree with that almost at a theological level, that all unity can only be found in logos in Christ. That linguistics dissects the structure of the logos further and establishes the sound of the word, coupled with the sense of the word, as the original and ideal location of metaphysical significance. Logocentric linguistics proposes that, quote, the immediate and privileged unity which founds significance and the acts of language is the articulated unity of sound and sense with the phonic, unquote. And that is actually from Derrida himself, from this book. As the science of language, linguistics is a science of a way of the semiotic phonology, meaning of sound. It follows, therefore, that speech is the primary form of language and that writing is secondary, representative, and, importantly, outside of speech. Again, writing is a sign of a sign. It's not the place where meaning ultimately resides. And so we can then go into a lot of different concepts regarding this. Jacques Derrida's book, again, Grammatology, is where he really tries to take on Saussure, Ferdinand de Saussure, and his he had a very logocentric line of thought. This is, again, 1857, 1913, so we're looking at the end of the 19th century, basically, where they were much in promotion of what we would call a logocentric worldview. This is obviously going to be under attack in the 20th century. But it's important to note that this is way more complex than just alphabets. So multiple scholars, Dennis Tedlock, for example, has pointed out that a sort of logocentric worldview, again, related to all these things in regards to how science developed, how we understand the objective reality of truth and experience and morality and society and numbers and mathematics. This is not true for all societies. So at one point, it was believed that maybe this is just tied to alphabet languages, but most scholars nowadays would actually reject that idea. And so Dennis Tedlock actually pointed out the Maya culture and how they had an alphabet, but they clearly didn't have what we would consider a logocentric worldview. And I think this makes a lot of sense to us. Even when you think of the Mayan culture, and you think of sort of Central America, I think it is ironic that, of course, they, the conquistadors and the bringing of Catholicism to that region brings about a sort of logocentric worldview. And so when we think of the Maya culture or the Aztecs, we can think of some traditions that were really wrapped up in even psychedelic mushrooms and these really crazy rituals of cutting people's heads off, rolling down the pyramids, this or that. So again, going to have a very different understanding of human worth. So all this stuff is going to be tied together. Again, I'm trying to emphasize in the phallogocentric concept. And some of the people that were part of the sort of post-structuralist movement, or where people were grabbing these ideas from, or somebody like a Nietzsche, a Heidegger, a Freud. And so we can already see where a lot of this stuff is going and why we would be in opposition to it. Now, let me see. So I have a phallus and I love the eternal logos. Oh man, Doorman360, that is hilarious. And thank you for the $2, brother. That is hilarious. So now I want to get into some actual reading a little bit of Derrida so we can understand. Again, this is going to be very difficult to follow because of the way that he writes. But this is all going to be, and I just have certain sections here highlighted in regards to when he's actually talking about logos. But this is in regards to the signifier and truth. And even though, Derrida ultimately doesn't believe in a sort of objective reality of truth, yet at the same time, he's wanting everybody to believe his worldview that truth isn't ultimately objective, which is trying to make a sort of objective statement of truth. So we would understand that. But here's the first section that I wanted to share with you guys, and it reads, and you're going to see how difficult he is to sort of follow. The rationality, but perhaps that word should be abandoned, for reasons that will appear at the end of the sentence, which governs a writing thus enlarged and radicalized no longer issues from a logos. Further, it inaugurates the destruction, not the demolition, but the desedimentation, the deconstruction of all the significations that have their source in that of the logos, particularly the signification of truth. All the metaphysical determinations of truth, and even the one beyond metaphysical ontotheology that Heidegger reminds us of, are more or less immediately inseparable from the instance of the logos, or a reason thought within the lineage of the logos, in whatever sense it is understood. And so he goes into then talking about Socratic philosophy, this or that. And so he's talking about... he says it signifies... talking about spoken language here, again, because this is what the whole conversation is about, is the privileging of spoken language over written language, because postmodernism is a literary movement. So it was literary theorists that came up with this whole idea that really there's infinite interpretations to read a text, that there is no objective way in which to read a text. So this was the previous understanding of like hermeneutics, exegesis, taking meaning and extracting meaning from a text. Well, there's the author meant to say something, and therefore when you read it, what you're trying to do is glean what it is that that author is trying to say. Now, the postmodernists said, actually, that is a limiting of truth and opportunity, that in perspective, that really the author does not have authority of what he has written. And once it has been written, there are infinite interpretations, and no one interpretation is more significant or truer than the other. This obviously, then we could lead this, let that then marinate in society for 40 years, and we get, well, now it's been up to 80 years, but you get my truth is equal to your truth, right? This is the same concept. Again, it was rooted in hermeneutics, exegesis, and literary theory. And so he's talking about spoken language and says that it signifies mental experience, which themselves reflect or mirror things by natural resemblance. Between being and mind, things and feelings, there would be a relationship of translation or natural signification between mind and logos, a relationship of conventional symbolization. And the first convention, which would relate immediately to the order of natural and universal signification, would be produced as spoken language. Logocentrism would thus support the determination of the being of the entity as presence, to the extent that such a logocentrism is not totally absent from Heidegger's thought. Perhaps it still holds that thought within the epoch of ontotheology, within the philosophy of presence, that is to say, within philosophy itself. And so this whole conversation on presence is really important, and we need to keep in mind as Christians, because what they're actually advocating for, they're using words like ontotheology, is that when we focus meaning in spoken language, whoever speaks it, then there's a presence there, right? Somebody is actually behind those words. But when we actually take meaning away from the spoken language and put it into written language, somebody doesn't have to be present to be there, right? And so this is really what he's trying to highlight in this idea of ontotheology and presence. And so I wanted to highlight for us as Christians how this relates to personhood, right? If meaning is tied to spoken language, which you and I can all do, and which God did in terms of speaking the world into existence, if it's tied to personhood, then presence is going to be very, very important. But if the move is really to depersonalize meaning, well, then you'd want to root it in written language. And by doing that, whoever says something actually doesn't have to be there. There is no presence. And this is what they're actually an advocacy of. And so another section here that I wanted to share with you guys reads, the difference between signified and signifier belongs in a profound and implicit way to the totality of the great epoch covered by the history of metaphysics, and in a more explicit and more systematically articulated way to the narrower epoch of Christian creationism and infinitism, when these appropriate the resources of Greek conceptuality. This is essentially an irreducible, and one cannot retain the convenience of the scientific truth of the Stoic or later medieval opposition between signans and of their work begins where metaphysics ends. And this is another important of their work begins where metaphysics ends. And this is another important thing to highlight in regards. This is another important aspect to highlight in regards to philosophy is the doing away with metaphysics itself. You see, if you guys are familiar with Dyer's, and I'm sure you are, the Transcendental Argument for God, this is rooted in a sort of metaphysical approach to how you justify all these philosophical transcendentals. So metaphysics is very important for a Christian paradigm, for a Christian worldview. And that's one of the reasons why they want to really attack metaphysics. Metaphysics is hardly even done in many philosophy departments. So moving on, he says, but these physico-theological roots, many other hidden sediments cling. And again, it's very kind of, it's strained. The way he writes is very strange. The semiological, or more specifically, linguistic science cannot therefore hold on to the difference between signifier and signified, the very idea of the sign, without the difference between sensible and intelligible, certainly, but also not without retaining more profoundly and more implicitly, and by the same token, the reference to a signified able to take place, unquote, in its intelligibility,
before its, quote, fall, before any expulsion into the exteriority of the sensible here below. As the face of pure intelligibility, it refers to an absolute logos to which it is immediately united. This absolute logos was an infinite creative subjectivity in medieval theology. The intelligible face of the sign remains turned towards the Word and the face of God.
And we would absolutely agree with that. But again, he's writing all this stuff as somebody who is in opposition to the whole logocentric worldview.
Thus, within this epoch, reading and writing, the production of interpretation of signs, the text in general as fabric of signs, allow themselves to be confined within secondariness. They are preceded by a truth, or a meaning already constituted by and within the element of the logos.
Absolutely. We would believe that meaning is ultimately not found in the written word.
Even when the thing, the referent, is not immediately related to the logos of a creator, God, wherein it began by being the spoken/thought sense, the signified has at any rate an immediate relationship with the logos in general, finite or infinite, and a mediated one with the signifier, that is to say, with the exteriority of writing. When it seems to go otherwise, it is because a metaphoric mediation has insinuated itself into the relationship and has simulated immediacy, the writing of truth in the soul, opposed by Phaedrus, to bad writing. The book of nature and God's writing, especially in the Middle Ages, and all that functions as metaphor in these discourses, confirms the privilege of the logos and founds the literal meaning then given to writing, a sign signifying a signifier. Again, writing, language, is a sign of a sign. Itself signifying an eternal verity, eternally thought and spoken in the proximity of a present logos. The paradox to which attention must be paid is this: natural and universal writing, intelligible and non-temporal writing, is thus named by metaphor. A writing that is sensible, finite, and so on is designated as writing in the literal sense. It is thus thought on the side of culture, technique, and artifice, a human procedure, the ruse of a being accidentally incarnated or a finite creature. Of course, this metaphor remains enigmatic and refers to a literal meaning of writing as the first metaphor. This literal meaning is yet unthought by the adherents of this discourse. It is not, therefore, a matter of inverting the literal meaning or the figurative meaning, but of determining the literal meaning of writing and metaphoricity itself. So then he goes into what natural writing is, and I know this stuff can get a little bit boring, but it's really, really important, because once I start going into the attacks on objective beauty, the attacks on the nuclear family, I have a thing from the BLM website, going into attacks on determinateness itself, things like gender, we can see why this is a movement within scholasticism by high-level academics, because what they're rooted in is this anti-logocentric worldview. Okay, and so that's why I'm trying to lay all this stuff out. Yeah, it sounds a little boring and it's very verbose, but after I finish this next paragraph, I want to show why this is actually important to know. So natural writing is immediately united to the voice and to breath. Right. And so keep this in mind at a theological level. Again, he's critiquing it, but I think there's something very appropriate here when he says that its nature is not grammatological, which he's in favor of, but pneumatological. Exactly. By focusing meaning on the spoken word, as we hear in our creation myth, God spoke the world into existence in Genesis, it is a focus on a pneumatological understanding of meaning, of the spirit. Right. Now, again, he's in opposition to this, but I think that is a very insightful thing to see. It is hieratic, very close to the interior holy voice of the profession of faith, to the voice one hears upon retreating into oneself, full and truthful presence of the divine voice to our outer sense. Quote, the more I retreat into myself, the more I consult myself, the more plainly do I read these words written in my soul. Be just, and you will be happy. I do not derive these rules from the principles of higher philosophy. I find them in the depths of my heart, written by nature in characters which nothing can efface. Unquote. And so that was I don't really want to read too much of Derrida, but that is him talking about grammatology and again getting into this concept of phallogocentrism. Just to give a little bit more background to this concept, in contemporary literary and philosophical works concerned with gender, the term phallogocentrism is commonplace largely as a result to the writings of Jacques Derrida. Okay, we've just covered that. The founder of the philosophy of deconstruction, which is considered by many academics to constitute the essential part of the discourse of postmodernism. We've already discussed that. Deconstruction is a philosophy of indeterminateness and its opposing philosophy, determinateness. Determinateness is a logocentric worldview, right? Because we have an objective order, we have logic, mathematics, number theory, truth, love, honor. These things are objective. These things may be transcendental. They may be difficult you can't touch them, but we believe in them objectively. There's a determinateness to them. According to deconstruction, indeterminate knowledge, okay, I've actually shared that with you earlier. The phallogocentric argument is premised on the claim that modern Western culture has been and continues to be, I mentioned this earlier, both culturally and intellectually subjugated by logocentrism and phallocentrism. Logocentrism is the term Derrida uses to refer to the philosophy of determinateness, while phallocentrism is the term used to describe the way logocentrism itself has been genderized, right? What gender did Christ incarnate in? And so, of course, it doesn't mean that male is privileged over the female in an ultimate sense in terms of a value or evaluation in front of God, but linguistically, culturally, there is something there. And so logocentrism itself has been genderized by a masculinist, a phallic, or patriarchal agenda, according to Derrida. Hence, Derrida intentionally merges the two terms together. And then it was picked up by the French feminists, and they really popularized it in the 1970s, and we don't really need to go there much further. So let me go back to the chat here. Everybody still following? Yeah, okay. So where then are we seeing, and again, here are some of the energies of logos. When we think of logos, we think of order, we think of language, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, truth, logic, honor, love, objective beauty, and family. These are various things that we would hold dear. And these are the exact things that I want to highlight now that are under attack in society. And so the first one is the contradictions and hypocrisy. Anybody who's been following the goings on in the world, and I was trying to highlight this in recent conversations around mask, is again, society, the submission to the state, really getting us to engage in irrational activity. We know that the mask doesn't protect you from a virus. We know that asymptomatic transmission is very low. We know that people are writing articles about how BLM didn't spread the virus. And in fact, in those cities, there was no outbreak. But in all these other cities, there are major outbreaks. And then we see how they're manipulating the cases by using, weaponizing our own immunological system against it. Now, I don't want to dive down the whole rabbit hole of mask, but the point is to highlight hypocrisy and contradictions, because this is a fundamental way in which you deconstruct the logocentric worldview. And that's exactly what we see in today's society. So we see a determinate structure in gender, male and female. Very clear, very simple. But what has really emerged in the last 20 years or so is a reemergence of an indeterminate understanding of gender. Again, a deconstruction of gender. And they even use these frames, the academics, when talking about this stuff. So transgenderism then, the transitioning between genders. Now men can give birth, right? Women have
a penis or something like that. I mean, just something, just again, total contradiction, total absurdity, against logic, against God, against a logocentric worldview of determinate structures itself. So we see this embodied in a scholar like Judith Butler. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of her. Judith Butler is a famous lesbian Jewish scholar at UC Berkeley who's known for her prominent theory called performative gender theory. And performative gender theory is that the performance of gender itself creates gender. And that gender then is not, so she is very prominent in sort of the disassociation between sex and gender. So she may recognize that sex so the chromosomal argument that XX, XY, she may recognize that and give that a sort of validity. But then she says that gender is a cultural phenomenon. So from her perspective, language, the way we wear clothes, the way we interact with each other, these are all social conventions and cultural conventions, and that male and female don't ultimately exist. She believes that, again, you perform your gender. And again, she is rooted, she believes she's part of the critical theory school. She is a deconstructionist. She's part of the postmodernist movement. She's much into, again, the redefining of sex and gender, of sexuality itself. If you go and go ahead and do a Wikipedia search of her, and you'll see it come up. She actually has a long page. She's considered one of the great academics in the world right now. Now, I totally disagree. I actually met Judith Butler when I was in Berkeley. I went to a presentation from a scholar, and this was a religion scholar. She was also a Jewish scholar, and it was on lesbianism. And then Judith Butler came and gave like a keynote speech at this presentation inside a church, mind you. And it was just, all the students were just fawning over themselves to shake her hand, tell her how much they loved her writing and her theories, and again, performative gender theory. Go into Wikipedia, put in Judith Butler, and you'll see she has a huge page. She has all these academic awards. She's held as like one of the top academics. But there is no objective truth. Everything is performative, and it's even sort of a linguistic phenomenon. It's all postmodernism. It's infinite interpretations, infinite numbers of genders. So this is a direct assault on our determinateness of a logocentric worldview. And this is really what's happening at a cultural level. This is the fight. And when we look then, we can look at math, for example. I have some stuff that I wanted to show you guys. Math. Seattle schools, here, let me do this. Seattle schools propose to teach that math education is racist. Will California be far behind? I'll just read the first couple paragraphs here. Again, guys, total opposition to the metaphysics and the fundamental principles of a Christian worldview. California's latest K-12 test scores were released earlier this month. Despite spending 26% more per pupil after inflation since 2011, test scores remain low, and improvement is proceeding at a glacial pace. Just 40% of California school children are proficient in math. What should be done? Seattle's idea is to teach their students that U.S. math education is racist. It is used to oppress people of color and the disadvantaged, and has been used to exploit natural resources. So again, I have about 4 or 5 different articles here that I want to share with you guys. The whole thing is all these things, whether it be objective beauty, the nuclear family, math and logic. These are all going to be deemed racist. They're going to be tied to colonialism. It's going to be tied to white people. And really what it's tied to, it's not white people. It's not colonialism. It's logocentrism. It's the basic principles of our worldview, of our metaphysics, of how we understand the world to be. This is what is under attack. According to Seattle educators, math instruction in the United States is an example of Western math. Yes, because there's multiple ways to do math, of course, which apparently is the appropriation of mathematical knowledge by Western cultures. While everyone agrees that 2 + 2 is 4, and I actually have something to show you guys that is not the case. I have a a PhD who says 2 plus 2 does not equal 4, that is white colonial racism. So even that is now under attack, and I'm sure you guys probably seen this stuff as well. In that there are, while everyone agrees that 2 plus 2 is 4, which they don't, 3 times 3 is 9, which they don't, and that there are 360 degrees in a circle, Western math critics worry about the more nuanced issues, such as why we teach kids Western counting and not, for example, how the Aborigines count. Yes, the Aborigines, guys, the people who actually engage in cannibalism. Now, we might find interesting things from a sort of sociological or cultural investigation, or religious studies investigation of their dream time, of their sort of traditional ways of being. But certainly, from a Christian worldview, there is no comparison in regards to the morality, in regards to a sort of sophisticated understanding of anything. They may be more nuanced in their relationship to the natural environment they live in, and that's something that, again, we all need to get our own homestead so we can go and do, become our own pioneers. This is another thing that I was thinking about today, side note, but related to these Aborigines, is we need to revalorize the term pioneer. Pioneer is who our Western ancestors were, who knew how to work and live out in nature. I was thinking about how I could create something or a design regarding to an Orthodox pioneer, and how, so something about Orthodox, I don't know, I'll think more about it, but pioneers, when we think about the pioneers, when we think about Daniel Boone or whoever who going across America, Lewis and Clark, guys, I don't know if, I'm sure some of you have you driven across the United States? Have you driven across the Rocky Mountains? Can you imagine taking off from St. Louis, Missouri, and ending in the Northwest Pacific at a time when there were no roads? That is amazing. These people, and we need to, we need to revalorize our ancestor. We shouldn't shy away from this stuff as colonial colonizers and racists and this or that. Again, even implicit right here in the discussion of math. Apparently, ancient cultures also use different terminology to refer to addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. They may have focused on geometric shapes different from triangles and circles. Yes, because there's so many different geometric shapes. They may have called the degrees in a circle something other than degrees. And now it seems that math education and all of its abstraction should become culturally and socially focused away from those Westerners who co-opted it. So, just crazy, absolute nonsense. And there is something that I wanted to share with you guys real quick. So let me grab that. In regards to a woman not... hold on. Where is that? Sorry guys. Trying to find this. Trying to find this image that I had of a woman who. There we go. Now we got it. Okay. Sorry about that. But check this out. This is a PhD. I think it's at the University of Chicago. The University of Chicago, which is supposed to be a preeminent school. A preeminent school, guys. Nope, the idea of 2 plus 2 equaling 4 is cultural and because of Western imperialism / colonialization. We think of it as the only way of knowing. And really, again, just as Father Hans Jacobs, he talked about, and I tried to start this video off with, that this whole anti-patriarchy, this whole anti-logocentrism is what I would say, is rooted in an animosity to God himself. Because without a clear thinking, without logic, without understanding how we come to knowledge, how can we know God? How can we know God? And look at what this stuff produces. You know for a fact she's a BLM supporter and all this other stuff, a progressive worldview, sexual degeneracy. That's why I wanted to create this video, and I know it's kind of airy-fairy talking with Derrida and all this stuff, but it's really important to see what is under attack. It's not just white people. It's the presuppositions and the metaphysics of a Christian worldview, generally speaking. And that is what we are up against. And so this nonsense has to be stopped. It has to be stopped. And so where's another way in which we are seeing an attack on logos, on logocentrism, on Christianity? Well, what about logic? Yes, I kid you not, logic. Look at this book, guys. White Logic, White Methods, Racism and Methodology. No, I kid you not. This is of the idea that social scientists and the humanities in general need to figure out how to reappropriate their methodology because logic has been used in racist ways. Look, here's the abstract. In this collection of essays, the authors examine how racial considerations have affected the way social science is conducted, how issues are framed, and data is analyzed. With an assemblage of leading scholars, White Logic, White Methods explores the possibilities and necessary dethroning of current social research practices and demands a complete overhaul of current methods towards multicultural and pluralist approach to what we know, think, and question. So yes, guys, logic itself is racist. Logic itself is racist. And so when we see, again, the hypocrisy and the internal contradictions of the world we live in, yes, it's funny at times. Yes, it's sad and frustrating. But it's deeper than that. It's a totally different paradigm that is in opposition to our Christianity, to what Christianity says. And so we need to be aware of this, and this is all tied to Phallogocentrism. So when we see the objection to math and logic, and then we see these discussions of taking down patriarchy, this or that, these are not separate things. It's all one thing. It's the Phallogocentrism, the central pillar of Christendom that Derrida highlighted in the 60s that has to be destroyed. That's what it's all about. And so 2 + 2 is racist. White logic is racist. Attacks on the societal order. This is another, I see, attack on logos. Is that maybe, again, I would say that I've had negative encounters with police officers, certainly, and that there are absolutely bad apples. But it is important to see that the sort of allowing of chaos to manifest in society, this is another way in which this agenda can be provoked. I watched Father Peter Hears on Orthodox Ethos, him talk about coronavirus, and again, its demonic methodology. Totally in line here. Everything that I'm saying agrees with his video. It's just I'm trying to highlight this concept of Phallogocentrism as being the sort of ultimate thing that these intellectuals that are really behind a lot of this movement of what they actually are in opposition to and hate. So I do recommend Father Peter Hears on Orthodox Ethos. If you haven't, go subscribe to his channel, Orthodox Ethos. Great YouTube channel. Really insightful stuff. But the defunding of the police, I told you before that I also think there's a more of a malicious or sort of sinister intention behind all that, because who is most affected by the defunding of the police other than those people who live in the inner cities, who are surrounded by gang violence, this or that. And then we've seen these shootings drastically rise. Look at Chicago. Look at New York City. Look at Portland. Look at all these people, just Detroit. There's a video going around in Detroit of a guy shooting 3 guys right in the face inside of it looked like some type of fast food restaurant. But the defunding of the police is a way in which to institute more chaos, which the chaos is in opposition to order, which we would be in advocacy of. Attacks on the nuclear family. Look, I wanted to show you guys this. This is a screenshot straight from the BLM website. This is from the BLM website. If you go to what we believe in, if you go to Black Lives Matter, go to their main website, click on what we believe in, and if you scroll down, I just did a word search for family because I knew what I was looking for. It says, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. Notice no fathers. Notice no fathers there. And I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to read this next paragraph, and I want to come back to why there's no fathers there. We foster a queer-affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather, the belief that all in the world are heterosexual unless she, he, or they disclose otherwise. Now, I've talked to you guys previously about pagan societies, goddess-centered societies, and how they would have orgiastic activities during the full moon. By doing this, this would alleviate men knowing their paternal rights, or who, in fact, they are, what women are giving birth to whose children. So these orgiastic activities, women would get pregnant, and they would give birth, and it'll be only the women who knew whose children were who, and therefore it was raised by the village. That is exactly what Black Lives Matter is trying to reinstitute. That's exactly what they're trying to promote, and that's exactly what we as Christians cannot support, because we believe in the nuclear family, and we believe that a nuclear family working in its right way is how children first encounter love. And there's been multiple studies that show how people's relationship to their father is a great determinant in regards to how they understand God and if they become religious or not. So the nuclear family is huge. Even in regards to homosexuality, it's been seen that, again, this is not all cases, but if you've ever looked into conversion therapy and exactly how that works, it has to do with an individual's relationship to their father almost every time. And so when we look at the absence of fathers in the house, the high rate of fatherlessness, take the African American community, for instance, after the establishment of welfare in 1964, which then was incentivized, of course, right? The women don't get their checks unless they're the single parent in the house. Well, what does that do? That has only feminized society. And again, total opposition to our foul logocentric worldview, that it's upon men. And this is also where we, not you and I specifically, but generally speaking, men have to take responsibility for the degradation of Western culture. It was on us. All cultures are on the men. It's on us. We defend it. We allowed the degeneracy to happen. We've allowed our sort of being enamored with sin, with sex, with money, with things, all the bells and whistles of modern society. It's on us. We are the ones that have fallen victim to this. We are the only ones who can turn this around, and that is why then toxic masculinity and all this stuff, because the system, our enemy, ultimately it's the devil himself. Ultimately it's Satan. He knows who's behind all that. He knows who his greatest rivals are, and that would be strong Christian men who live masculine family lifestyles. That's how we change the society that we're living in. Going and protesting on the street isn't going to do it. Finding somebody you love and having children with them, that will do it. And then establishing within those children strong traditional Christian values and a worship and a reverence and ultimately a fear of God himself. That's how we change. That's what we have to do. That's what we've got away from. And look what's happened again from the 1960s. You know, one of the shows that I watch quite often, and I'm not, take of this what you will, but I actually tape a lot of the Andy Griffith shows. Now, I know at times it's a little corny, very old, black and white sort of comedy skit television series, but it's wholesome. It has good values. It has good lessons. It's something that I can play while I'm doing something else, and passing time. That at least it's good values that are going in and out. And it's so sad to see how far society has fallen from the early 60s. I mean, it's gross. It's gross. It's gross, and it's on us, and that's why we have to take control of our lives, and that's going to allow us to take control of society, generally speaking. So the attacks on the nuclear family, heteronormativity is very bad, very bad. And so what's another thing that I found? Marriage and patriarchy. So another article I found just trying to show all this stuff, that marriage is an ancient yet contemporary institution. Its cultural allure lies in its ability to appeal to aspirations for love, happiness, and identity. Ceremonial bonding is a way of tying individuals together in pursuit of a fulfilling future. You can't fault couples for wanting a marvelous life, but the troubles with marriage are many. I will examine two. And guys, there are multiple articles I could have screenshot in regards to trying to tell women not to marry. Have as much sex as you want. Have as many abortions as you want. In fact, the abortions are almost like patches you want to put on your letter jacket. And it just symbolizes how far we have fallen. And then this whole, this idea of feminist freedom is really the bringing in, the sort of ushering in Satan himself. And I'm not saying women are evil at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm talking about radical feminism. Again, Judith Butler, prominent third wave feminist scholar. We see where all this stuff goes. Who are those people out protesting? Why is there so many white women at these BLM protests? And it shows you something that, again, we need to keep in mind. So wallpapers, I thought this was a weird phrasing. Wallpapers over unequal social conditions between men and women. So I don't know why the wallpaper, like she's using that as a sort of adjective, but and then it demotes intimate, non-sexualized relationships, friends, siblings, humans, and with other animals to a lower status. So your best friend is not the same thing as getting married to somebody and taking a vow in front of God. And of course, to these feminists, this is a bad thing. I have no idea why it would be a bad thing. And even having a different level of a status in a relationship shouldn't be a bad thing. But you see, again, from a presuppositional level, the fact that it demotes intimate, non-sexualized relationship to a lower status, there should be nothing wrong with that, because everything is hierarchical and in actual reality. Nothing is total equality. This is all a fake. We've talked about Alexander Schmemann in his talking about the sort of satanic yearnings for these abstract, generalized concepts as opposed to person to person. And so, of course, certain relationships take on a primacy over other relationships. Why would that be a bad thing? Why would that be a bad thing? Why would anybody want the relationship with your wife to be the same thing as other animals? Like, there's just no logic, which, again, of course there's no logic behind it, because they're in opposition to that paradigm. They're in opposition to that paradigm. It's just crazy. So we see marriage as another attack against the Phallogocentrism pillar of Christendom. And we need to recognize this for what it is. Turn that one off. What's the next one? Objective beauty. Objective beauty is racist as well. So objective beauty standards, having a fit physique of, again, it has nothing to do with skin color. That's the thing. it has to do with these larger understandings of aesthetics. So proportions of one's face, typically not having face tattoos or your ears gauged or tattoos everywhere. These are usually traditional signs of beauty. And I went and it doesn't take very long. You just put in objective beauty is racist and you get tons of articles. Marriage is patriarchy, and you get tons of articles. So beauty in the eyes of the colonizer. This whole article was about how white Europeans have dominated the conversation of beauty and what beauty is. And again, from our understanding, given, again, the determinateness, what I was trying to highlight, the determinateness of logos, yeah, there is an objective standard to this stuff. It's not all subjective. Yeah, subjectivity in terms of whoever you particularly find attractive, absolutely. But when we look at beauty, when we look at art, these things are not entirely subjective. And that could have been another one that I grabbed an article for. I didn't. But I could have grabbed one on art itself and looked at, abstract expressionism or something like that, modern art. And it's just the stupidity, the hideousness, how ugly it is. Traditionally speaking, beauty has symmetry. It has order. It has, beautiful aesthetics. You go to a modern art museum and they have a string dangling from the ceiling above a toilet or something. And this is supposed to be beautiful. I mean, it's ridiculous. And that's why we have to see that, why is this stuff existing? Why is Satan, Lucifer, the devil, evil, whatever, why is it using these vehicles to alter society? And that's why this video is to show that it's the Phallogocentrism, the central pillar of Christendom, which they're in opposition to. That's why they want, even when I look at, I just had a brain fart. Yeah, Marina. Oh, thank you, Pano. I'll get to the super chats here in a minute, guys. If you have any questions or any comments, feel free to throw in a super chat. Or again, if anybody is in a financial position, you like what I'm trying to do on this YouTube channel, if you would go to davidpatrickcarey.com, churchoftheeternallogos.com, and potentially set up $5 a month, I'd greatly appreciate it. But when you look at abstract art, it's all about anti-symmetry. It's all about, even there are aspects of modern architecture that I like. But you look at like the Barack Obama museum or library, and one of the points of emphasis by the architects was to have nothing parallel, have nothing absolutely symmetrical. And so the whole building is kind of, it's slight, it's not totally obvious, but I read this in an article. And then, so from that perspective, think of then the pedophile cults, things that Obama would be up to, the world elite. Obama is not the boomer scapegoat is Obama, but it's way, way more than Obama, as you know. I mean, I would say 99% of you guys already know that. But look at their type of art and what they push. It's absolutely disgusting, and it's in opposition to the presuppositions of our worldview. Let me just turn all these. Oh, here's another one. I wanted to share with you guys. Panoma College students say there's no such thing as truth. Truth is a tool of white supremacy. I kid you not. So objective truth itself is also racist. A coalition of marginalized students at Pomona College are demanding that the president of Pomona, one of the Claremont colleges, take disciplinary action against student journalists who write for the Claremont Independent, a conservative paper. That's not all. The student's letter to the president also stridently rejects the very mission of a liberal arts college. The search for truth is little more than an attempt to silence marginalized people and the views of the students. Yeah. So objectivity itself is racist. Again, that's what I was just trying to highlight with art, with beauty, with the objectivity of a family. Everybody of my age group that I've talked to that has had children says that it is one of the most beautiful experiences, if not the most beautiful experience of their life. And we live in a disgusting, satanic society that is trying to tell women not to have kids, have more abortions, don't get married, and really live a life of consumerism, a life of non-beauty. And I've talked about this before in regards to the scarification of people. It's absolutely nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So that is really all that I had, guys. Just wanted to throw that out there. I will go through some super chats now. The first one was by Doorman360. Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate that. He says, I have a phallus, and I love the eternal logos. I second that notion on both counts. And by the way, guys, if you have not, please hit that like button if you can. Pano, our good buddy, fellow Hoosier, threw in $5. Thank you very much, brother. I really appreciate it. He said, basically, eat away at the roots of the human conscience until everything becomes nothing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is really well put. That is what they're doing, is totally destroying the psyche of individuals, totally destroying the mental framework that he has allowed. Even though we can get into the problems of Western civilization, this or that, Enlightenment, secularism, all this stuff, yada yada. But there was a lot of good things also, and this process of the total opposition to the Phallogocentrism, the central pillar of Christendom, is really is nothing other than an anti-human death cult. Ultimately is what because life itself, I should have said this again, life itself is an energy of the logos. Life itself. Look what these people do. These people promote abortion. They promote again, I know these masks are controversial to some people, but we just saw Broward County in Florida institute mandatory mask in your home, people. In your home. That is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. And we've seen, I've already talked about with the increased number of fungal lung disease, fungal lung infections from people wearing these masks too long. Anybody who has family or who works in the medical field knows that those surgical masks you don't wear for more than 2 hours. You throw them away after a couple hours. You go to your local grocery store, some of these people are forced to wear that stuff for 8-10 hours a day, and then they go and they wear the same mask again. And that's why, again, mimetically, I think the face diapers is a great term for these things, because that is the point of them. They are there to catch excretions from the face, whether it be snot or saliva or even the toxins that you're breathing out. The point of breathing is to inhale oxygen and exhale CO2 and other toxins from the body. So just crazy. These people, it's everything that we believe to be good they're in opposition to. Orthodox Saints and Events threw in $10. Thank you very much, brother. I really appreciate it. He said, could you please link your bishop's instructions to burn monastery icons? I'm trying to build a case to burn or at least rid ourselves of ones of my church's iconostasis. I am not positive where I would be able to find the instructions. I was instructed by a fellow Antiochian Orthodox guy over in Illinois. Our bishop, Bishop Anthony, I believe is in Louisville, Kentucky, and he is the bishop over my parish. And it was him that he reached out to me because he saw my icon and said that Bishop Anthony just said for everybody to burn the monastery icon. So I took it down, and that same night I went and ordered a new icon. I'm getting the high priest icon, the Christ the high priest icon from Uncut Mountain. For anybody who is looking for icons, I would definitely recommend going to Uncut Mountain. But
Orthodox saint, I apologize. Maybe if you search Antiochian Church Bishop Anthony Monastery icons, maybe there was something announced online or written or published. The reason I say this is because somebody who goes or is within the same sort of jurisdiction under the same bishop, but he's over in Illinois, I'm in Indiana. He reached out to me and told me about the new recommendation or order or mandate or however you want to say it by our bishop to burn the monastery icons. And so people had mentioned to me before, people, they always write to me, hey, don't you know that you have a monastery? Yes, I know I have a monastery icon, but I took it to my church and it was it was blessed with holy water by my priest, who then told me, I told him the origin of the monastery icons and all that stuff. He said that there was nothing nothing wrong with the iconography of the icon, and told me to go ahead and keep it. But given what, from my understanding, has been said by the bishop, I am getting rid of it. So, Eugen, he threw in £5. I thought he had to go to bed. I thought he had an early night. Eugen said, just dropping by to send in some Anglo shekels. Good night, King. Take it easy, buddy. Thank you so much, Eugen. That guy is such a good guy. I really, really appreciate it, brother. Thank you for the £5. Pano threw in another $2. I actually just donated 5,000. Hashtag numbers, hashtag logic. Yeah, exactly. There's really no difference, right? Hilarious. Gosh. Legend. Thank you very much, Pano, man. I really appreciate the $7. Really, really do. But like I said, guys, I think maybe Thursday or Saturday I'll do a burning live stream where I'll try to hook up the computer outside. And obviously an evening, which it's nice. The weather is conducive, and do a burning live stream and just do like a Q&A or something, or maybe I can come up with a topic to ramble on. But yeah, and if anybody has some specific, I have a handful. I always have a handful of topics to do videos on. But if anybody has anything in specific they'd like to talk about, my goal was to actually the next stream I was going to go over an article I have by M.J. Edwards. It's titled Clement of Alexandria and His Doctrine of the Logos. And so I thought that might be a fun article to go through and just read the whole thing and kind of give a perspective on. So I was thinking about doing that. Thursday is going over Clement of Alexandria and his doctrine of the Logos. I had some other ideas, but if you guys have anything in particular, I'm always willing to change stuff up for something that's really good. But feel free to email me, David, or at churchoftheeternallogos@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, davidpatrickcarey.com, or churchoftheeternallogos.com. There's a contact link there as well that you can reach me directly at. But anyways, guys, that basically wraps up today's stream. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for the likes and the super chats. Everybody who donated, I greatly appreciate it. Again, anybody who might be in a financial position, you appreciate what I'm doing. If you could go to my website and set up something potentially just $5 a month, a cup of coffee, I'd greatly appreciate it. Pano said, why burn icons? My understanding is that they burn these icons is because they were created by Hindus, and it's believed by some that they participated in some sort of nefarious rituals over these icons. And so that is from my understanding, is that I think it has to do with something with the icons being made up. But yeah, exactly, Nate. So from my understanding, it's because they're made by Hindus. And some people, it's been alleged by multiple people who've messaged me, have alleged this, levied this accusation that they actually perform these sort of nefarious rituals over these icons. Now, the actual iconography of the icon, according to my priest, there's nothing wrong. Of course, technically, Christ wasn't crucified in his hands; he was crucified in his wrist. But that's actually a common occurrence on a lot of icons. But maybe I hate to burn it. It's it's in good condition, but my bishop did recommend everybody to burn them, so I will. Maybe I'll try to
befriend my bishop on Facebook and private message him and double check, make sure that's what he wanted. In fact, I think that's probably a good idea. But oh, it's Pano. It's not from a particular monastery. It's just this website. It's called Monastery Icons, and it's fooled a lot of Orthodox people, because you go there and they have very beautiful and vividly colored icons, and they have, in its course, they have them from all the most prominent icons people buy within Orthodoxy. And I bought it because I liked that it had the English "I am" over his head. And I probably should have known something was up when I saw that. But when I even took it to church, when I took mine to church on our icon day, where we get our icons blessed, and then we go outside and circumvent the building, everybody said, "Oh, they love my icon. It's so beautiful. They love the colors." And I had a big one, but it's made by the wrong people. And if they are doing nefarious rituals, and that's not good. Of course, it was already blessed by my priest, but still. So maybe that'd be a fun little live stream, is watching that burn and doing something. Nate, I want to give you thanks for moderating the chat. If anybody has any more icons, I have an icon from Legacy Icons. Is it no good? I have no idea who Legacy Icons are. I just know Monastery Icons specifically is a Hindu group that does nefarious things with their icons, apparently. Commissar 9. Oh, what's up, Matt? My girlfriend wrote an icon and my priest blessed it. Oh, that's awesome, dude. Shout out to Matt King, Commissar 9. I believe he just got baptized this past week. Matt, post in the chat, did you have your baptism this past weekend? Curious. I know there's a delay on the chat, but let me know, did you get baptized this past weekend? He's over at Constantine and Elena. I believe isn't that an OCA church? It's like a Romanian OCA church or something like that. I believe he got baptized. So congratulations to Matt. Oh, just from that one website. Yes, he did. See, everybody give a congratulations to Commissar 9 for his baptism, his chrismation into the Orthodox Church officially. Now they just have to get his Catholic girlfriend into the Orthodox Church. No, I'm kidding. They were both lovely, lovely people. I actually had the pleasure of meeting both of them. Congratulations, Matt. Really happy for you, and God bless you and your girlfriend. Hope everything is well. So, love my video on perennials. Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate that. Mr. Ashcraft. I appreciate that, brother. Based. The Romanian Episcopate is under the OCA, but is autonomous from the OCA. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, Red Pill Raccoon, he just got... Hey, it's been the same... It was the same weekend. And Red Pill Raccoon, he's in New York. I'm not sure what type of church or what jurisdiction, but I know he was also just chrismated this past weekend. So congratulations to both you guys. Very well done. Very well done. Well, guys, I think I'm going to bounce. I don't see any more questions. Thank you, everybody who was here. Thank you, Nate, for moderating the chat. God bless everybody. Hopefully, I didn't bore you too much with reading Derrida. I mean, this stuff is hard to get through. Jacques Derrida, I'm not a fan of reading that, but hopefully you found this video insightful, and it helped with an understanding of maybe a larger framework for what's going on in our culture, what is exactly being attacked at a sort of metaphysical level. That I think it all has to do with this Phallogocentrism. And I hesitate to say that because we're sort of using the language of the people who are in opposition to us, right? They call it Phallogocentrism, this or that. But I think there's a sort of accurate critique there that we need to recognize and then learn how to defend. That, yeah, I support patriarchy. Yeah, I don't want women as clergy in my church. Just look at all the other churches that have allowed that. I told you guys a story of the church that my parents go to is a Grace United Methodist church, and it was growing up, no women clergy. It was a very conservative Methodist church. Again, I wasn't much into theology or anything like that, but I grew up in that church. And I kind of left Christianity when I got into college, right? And when I came back from California to go to church with my parents, once I actually was a Christian, now I was much more interested in Orthodox Christianity at this point, had done my own sort of journey through spiritual worldviews, paradigms, this or that. And they had a female priest, or not priest, a minister, and she takes her dog up on the altar. And I only went once because the whole sermon that she preached was just be a good person. And I was just sick to my stomach. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. Be a good person is not Christianity. It's not Christianity. Following Christ, you will be a good person, but it's way more than just be a good person. You know, be a good person, be okay with the LGBTQ+. This is basically her thing. And now we see where the Methodist Church is. That, you know, they were the last mainline Protestant denomination that was holding out in regards to the ordination of homosexuals in the church, and now they fell to that. So it is what it is. But thank you guys. No, thank you. Says thanks, Kodal. I appreciate you guys. I really, really do. Hope everybody has a blessed and wonderful day. Again, if anybody has some specific topics on videos, for example, the video on God, the Tower of Babel, and technology, that was actually Boris P. I don't know if he's with us tonight. I said, hey, throw me some suggestions. He privately emailed me, gave me a list of questions that he'd be interested in being answered, and so I constructed a video around that whole email. But if you guys have any ideas or anything, feel free to email me at churchoftheeternallogos@gmail.com, and I would definitely be open. But I always have ideas. I can always think of something to do a stream on. But thank you. Oh, Dr. Mo's in the house. Everybody click on Dr. Mo and go subscribe to his channel. Dr. Mo, everybody needs to be following what he's talking about in regards to men's health, testosterone, peptides, for sure. In fact, maybe Dr. Mo will be available Thursday and we can do a stream on men's health. That'd be a good one. Get into stuff. Great to see Dr. Mo in the house. Gosh. Dr. Mo, great dude. Actually, we've had some good times together for sure. Yeah, dude. Everybody go to his channel and subscribe. He has some great content if you're really interested in sort of the optimization of men's health, herbs, peptides, testosterone, diet, all this stuff. Go check out Dr. Mo. He's a specialist. Really, really good stuff. So, anyways, guys, thanks again for everything. I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, as always, God bless.